In this second video, we'll be going through the disassembly and reassembly procedure, and I've speeded up a considerable portion of this because it's a very straightforward pin pallet movement, and the only real difference is it has a date complication, as you can see just here. The cover plate for the date wheel also holds the advance spring, and this is locked in place, and the cover plate itself is held in place by 3 small screws. Once that's removed, the date ring and then the hour wheel, cannon pinion and keyless works can all be removed. The intermediate winding wheel that is just visible there is riveted in place, which is very common across many pin pallet movements. This particular one is an EB8800 movement, a very commonly used Swiss movement. Disassembling the train side is very straightforward. The barrel has a retaining strap and lifts off a fixed post, as you can see there, and then the train bridge incorporates the entire train of wheels, including the escape wheel. Note that shouldered screws are used across this, but the barrel strap has one standard screw. There's a considerable amount of wiggling here to remove the bridge because the second wheel, which is next to the crown wheel, had actually corroded top and bottom into the bridge and into the plate, and this was to prove to be a problem later on during the rebuild because the pivots of the wheel, the one that's right there, had both corroded quite badly, and the upper one actually broke on reassembly. So here onto the reassembly, and it is, as the Haynes manuals say, the reverse of disassembly. Oiling all the appropriate parts before refitting. You'll note that there is one hole in the plate that isn't used, this being at the lower part of the screen that's visible to you, and this is for a sub-seconds should you have one of these movements that uses a fourth wheel which doesn't go through the centre pinion and actually drives a sub-seconds hand. The click spring can be slid into place once the train bridge is back on, and a little bit of lubrication at the contact point is added, and also added to the pivoting point for the click. The screw that holds the click in place also forms one of the securing screws for the train bridge, one of the 3 securing screws, the third of which is the non-shouldered screw that holds the barrel retaining strap in place. If you're just removing the barrel on one of these movements, you can just slightly loosen that particular screw and slide the retaining strap out. As you can see, it has a forked end. And this is something that can be quite handy if you are just simply swapping out a barrel or a mainspring, say for example if a spring has broken or it is slipping or something similar. And the crown wheel is reattached after lubricating the pivot points, noting that the securing screw on this is a left-hand thread, although the screw head doesn't denote this. More often than not, a crown wheel on pretty much any watch will be held by a left-hand thread, so if it does seem unduly tight, do make sure to try and untighten it in a clockwise direction before you risk stripping the head. Pallet fork is a little bit of a fiddle to get back in place because it has to be wiggled underneath the escape wheel, but once in it fits very easily and the pallet cock locates onto that nicely. When fitting or refitting the balance wheel, it's important that the lower pivot is located, and as you can see here that the balance wheel is rotated to make sure that the peg locates accurately, because the guard pin is in an upper position on this movement, unlike most watches where the guard pin will be at a lower position, so it's easier to drop the balance wheel in. It can be a little bit fiddly if you're not used to it. And there we see the movement is beating away. And back onto the dial side, and we'll begin reassembly with the keyless works. And as part of the keyless works, the minute wheel needs to be lubricated and fitted so that the setting lever spring can be fitted in place, as this secures the minute wheel as well. Note that the cannon pinion is not a friction fit, as is usually the case on most watches, and it's the friction is provided by the clutch wheel on the second wheel. I'm sure it does have a correct technical name, but I don't know what that is off the top of my head. Having some problems with running on reassembly, I noticed a low amplitude and noticed that the mainspring was slipping. Having ascertained it was slipping on the arbor, I did try to tighten the inner coil of the mainspring, which unfortunately did not work. And as those who've tried it will know, when you sort of keep going and try too hard, it would just breaks the spring, sadly. I then noticed on removing the barrel again, that the wheel here, which has a built-in slipping clutch, which acts kind of like your cannon pinion, I noticed was slightly canted, only very slightly, and only visible with the barrel removed. And on wiggling that to check it, the top pivot here had snapped, which was not hugely surprising because both of the pivots were very rusty. So I need to source another wheel before I can go ahead and get this one running. So here we are at the final part of the Sheffield Allsport Dive Watch, and as you can see, that's the watch completed with the case cleaned up, still retaining some of its scuffs and what have you. I don't want to, you know, try and polish it and get rid of too much character, plus it's plated, so I don't want to wear through everything there. I just want to clean it up and make it clean enough and wearable. The original crown I'm leaving because that's serviceable. It's very worn and it's worn through to the brass, and I could replace that, but you know, I don't want to replace things for the sake of replacing them. And the movement has now, well, the dial has obviously been refitted. It's been refitted back into the case and regulated, as you can see. It's ticking away nicely there with its huge arrowhead, hour hand and very prominent minute hand, and also the little arrowhead on the seconds hand. And then you've got all these loomed areas as well, all the way around the numbers and the markers. So it glows quite nicely. I'll try and get a loom shot at the end for you. And overall, I'm really pleased with this. It's got a few scuffs and scrapes and what have you, and it's obviously been used throughout its life, but I'm very pleased with this. I did have some problems during the rebuild, as I will probably mention in the voiceover for the movement, and I needed to get some parts, but fortunately managed to find a few parts on eBay, and I got a replacement second wheel with the slipping gear on. And you will have seen with the photograph that I will have put in obviously before this part of the video, showing you the difference between that and the worn away pivot. So that's all been refitted, everything's been cleaned and re-lubricated and put back together. I really could have done with running the movement through the machine again. Had I been doing this for somebody, then I would have run the whole movement through the machine again and re-lubricated everything. But as it is, and as it's just for myself, I don't mind that so much. And I can obviously strip and clean that again at any point should I need to do so. But I've also replaced the jewel on the dial side with another cap jewel, so it's now gone up from a 1 jewel movement to a 2 jewel movement. Ooh, I know, right? So exciting stuff. And what I'd like to do at some point is try and replace this with a fully jeweled 17 jewel version of the movement, but I would need to get a plate with all of the jewelling. I do have a bridge which is jeweled, but I'd need to get a plate with all of the appropriate jewelling as well, and that would leave everything jeweled with the exception, of course, of the pallet fork, which would be quite nice. But at the moment, it will do the job. It will do what I need it to do. Just now, I'm really pleased with how well that crystal's come up, and there it is, completed. But of course there is one more thing. It needs a strap, and what better strap to put on a black bezel dive watch than a Sean Connery Dr. No G10. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And I think that finishes the watch off very nicely indeed, and it really looks the part. This, of course, is the iconic Bond style, often mistakenly thought to be black and grey. It's actually black, red and green. You'll see the stripes there. If you look at close-up photos of Dr. No and Sean Connery wearing his big button Submariner. That's the end of this rebuild, sympathetic restoration and service of the Sheffield Allsport Dive Watch, which has now been rebuilt and on a Bond style G10. So Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.